So welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules podcast. And today's a little different. This is actually the second part of a podcast that I recorded a couple of weeks ago with Chip Klose, who is a marketeer in the great city of New York. Chip works with restaurants and kind of leisure establishments with their marketing. And if you haven't kind of listened to the first part, well, you need to check out Chip's podcast, which is the Restaurant Strategy podcast, and we'll include all of the links and all the in the show notes. But firstly, Chip, welcome to the Marketing Rules podcast.
I'm thrilled to be here. I love how you called me a marketeer, because here in the United States, we're just called marketers. But I love the distinction.
I think there's even different spellings for it. I never get it right if it's a double E at the end or not. But it's it's very popular to be called a marketeer at the minute. I think because it's kind of it's asexual. There's no kind of like it's kind of very just I think it's that kind of thing. I get called a marketeer all the time. I'm not sure if I approve or not, but I can't get away from it now. But you're now part of this club. You're in the marketeer club.
I'm glad to be part of the club for sure.
And also, if you get three of you together, you can call yourself the three marketeers as well.
See?
So.
There it is, which is the reason to do it, right?
Exactly. Chip, so on our previous podcast, you started off by asking me a little bit about my background and who I was, but we never got to talk about who you and when your background. So here it goes. Chip, please tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today, and a little bit more about the business that you set up.
It's well, I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you having me on the show. I'm glad we could do this. Like you said, it's not quite an interview. At least it wasn't when we were on the Restaurant Strategy podcast. It was more of a conversation, just kind of talking shop and looking at the similarities and differences between our two businesses, our two audiences, who we serve, and how we do it. So I'm thrilled to be back here doing the second part. My path has been kind of winding. We talked about this a little bit when I had you on my show. We both have a fine arts background. You went to art school. I went to art school. My trip coming here to marketing is kind of an odd one, a tangled one. I got my degree in theater. I came here to New York City to pursue a career in the arts. And as luck would have it, this is what you do in New York City when you're trying to make your way. You end up waiting tables, which is what I did. Except when I got involved with it, I came to really enjoy it. I came to learn a lot about food and wine and hospitality. I worked in a lot of fine dining restaurants. And so I always like to say that for the past 18 years, I've had two parallel careers. One in the arts and the other in hospitality. And it wasn't until about 2014, 2015 that I started finding a way to put them both together, that they didn't just exist on different tracks. I could put them together and bring the things I learned from the theater world, about storytelling and all of that, and apply that to the restaurant world. And little did I know that that's what marketing is, right? How do you tell compelling stories to sell products, to identify people who need services? And that's what marketing boils down to. I mean, it really started off with like social media, honestly. In like 2014, 2015, Instagram, at least here in the United States, started blowing up. And especially when it had to do with restaurants, you had to be on Instagram. You had to have, high quality photos of your food being posted consistently. And I've always been kind of an amateur photographer ever since I was in high school, and I learned how to, develop film and all that. And so it's always been a hobby. And I kind of said, you know what, I can do that. So I kind of willed myself into food photography. And that led me into taking on my own clients, and what started as kind of social media grew from there. The more I learned about marketing and kind of all the digital tools available to marketers or marketeers, and that's kind of where I landed. I've got my own company here, a marketing agency, a consultancy here in New York City, where I work specifically with small business owners, with restaurant owners, with chefs and managers, to help them kind of get their marketing whipped into shape. It's a company that I've run since 2016, so now in the 4th year of it, and it's been going great. That's been the impetus for me to start the Restaurant Strategy podcast and just keep going on.
Um, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, the just getting that plug in. The parallels in our kind of background are are uncanny. You know, so you were in the kind of in the arts. Were you an actor, or what was it you were doing when you were kind of in there?
So I started off, as many people do, as an actor. I discovered pretty quickly that that I didn't love it. I loved the industry. I loved theater, but I didn't love that aspect of it. I didn't need to be, the actors who need it. They need to do that. They should do that, and I didn't need it in the same way. I worked a lot. I worked a lot pretty much straight through college when I was getting my degree, and after graduating, I worked for a while, and I quickly realized I was like, I don't think this is long term for me. But I started exploring other sides of it, producing shows and directing and developing new works, and that eventually led me to write my own stuff, which is also pretty much what I do right now. Again, producing is very similar to marketing, to creating a business. It's all kind of tangled, and I realized now in hindsight that that I wouldn't have been happy in that track.
Mhm.
That by clicking over into directing, producing, writing, it's gotten me closer to the things that I'm really good at and the things that I'm really passionate about. And that's the same thing true with marketing.
Um, I'm just gonna stick with the theatre for a bit because that's fascinating, and we will get onto marketing in a minute. But did you was it you kind of targeted? You went to New York because of the theatre, because that's my understanding is New York is theatre, LA is the movies, right? And so you're a theatre actor. You are what we might class as a thespian. I mean, are you a classic, a classically trained? I mean, have you ever done Shakespeare? I suppose that's the big question, isn't it?
No, I haven't. I'm not good at Shakespeare. I'm terrible at memorizing, and so these large patches of speech, I couldn't do. Really, what I what I was interested in and remain interested in is musical theater. I love the medium. I love music and dance, and it was interesting to me to be able to push that art form to kind of a new level, so it didn't have to be all cheesy tap dancing. While there's a
Mhm.
place for that, I just thought, music moves people, everybody, anybody, right? Like, and why does there have to be this disconnect between the kind of music we hear in the theater and the kind of music we hear on the radio? That's been my mission as a theater maker, just bridging those two gaps, making it feel just as momentary as popular music is.
So
How can we do that on the stage?
you must be being kind of thrilled with something like Hamilton, right? Because that's literally doing exactly what you were kind of you're describing there, right? It's kind of bridging those genres.
It really does. I mean, that's the one that everybody knows, but there's really great stuff going on just over the last 10 years where we've gotten more of that. Shows like Next to Normal and Fun Home and Dear Evan Hansen, and there are shows that are doing it, that are finally bridging that gap where
Mhm.
the thing you hear on the Broadway album sounds an awful lot like the kind of things you hear on the radio. And so Hamilton's, of course, just the most obvious thing we can point to now.
Um, I suppose again up front, I am not a massive musical theatre fan. Um, but I kind of I have seen little bits, but it's just I think I think it's kind of one of those things you kind of you kind of love and then you continuously love, you know. But I think
I
it's
think a
difficult
lot
to
of
get it to
people
layer it. Go on.
I
Sorry.
think a lot of people, no, you have no apologies necessary. I think a lot of people haven't been given the chance to love it because it hasn't presented something that is appealing to them. And that's bizarre, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can open the iTunes library and find anything you want, right? If you're really into this, you're going to find this. If you're really into that, you're going to find that. Music in particular has become so splintered in a great way now, because it's easier because of the internet to be able to find other people who like the specific thing that you like, right?
Mm.
30 years ago, if you were really into death metal, right, and you were just in some little town, what are the odds that you found somebody else or 10 other people who were really into death metal? But now you can find those people, and you can, have a community of hundreds or thousands or millions of people who are really into that one specific thing you're into. So, especially when we talk about musical theater, we just think of it in terms of Broadway, the West End, it sounds the way we think it sounds, or
Hmm.
we it sounds the way it should. And I guess kind of what gets me excited is that it doesn't have to sound that way. It doesn't have to be anything. I think there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of room for growth, and especially in our digitized world, right, where we're all just sitting, especially now, during this pandemic, coming out of this pandemic, we're all stuck in our houses and our apartments, more separate than ever. That there's an opportunity to collect in a room with 1,000 other people and share an experience. I think more and more we're going to come out of this thing, and that's going to be something that we all really cherish.
Um, well, Chip, I could talk to you about this all day, but this is so we really should talk about a little bit about marketing, I guess.
Well, the interesting thing is that this has a lot to do with what I do marketing restaurants, because it's, we haven't been able to go into a theater and share an experience for the past 6 months. And I liken that. This is, again, where these things, there's such parallels in my life and in the work that I do, because it's the same thing with restaurants. My job is to help market restaurants, and it's the same, they're the same challenges, right? Part of your audience isn't going to feel comfortable coming back into the restaurant, at least until there's a vaccine, maybe. But then there's another host of people that are just dying for that experience, for that shared experience, to taste somebody's food that they didn't prepare. And so the challenge is similar. I can't help but think it.
And it's interesting, I guess, the kind of the restaurants and theatre are integrally entwined, basically, right? On a couple of levels. One is the simple fact that most people, when you're going to the theatre, you used to go out for a meal first. Okay, so there's a sequence, and you just that's what you do. Two is that eating at a restaurant should be an experience, and it's usually right. It should be almost like a shared experience. Usually, it might be with one other person, a group of people, the entire restaurant, however that's restaurant set up. So, and we kind of touched on this a little bit last time about the kind of experience you get in the restaurant is where the marketing should start. I mean, that's what because that's what you want to get out to other people. It's like it's a great experience to eat here, even if the food is no different to anyone else's around the corner. It's about that experience. So it's interesting. I do have a load of questions to ask, but I'll get onto them. How do you market a shared experience? How do you get that out to that larger audience? How do you represent that?
This has largely been my challenge over the last 4 years, and it's an uphill battle trying to get business owners, restaurant owners, to see that as something they should primarily focus on. I mean, restaurant owners are notoriously bad at thinking, thinking further out than the next week or the next month. Restaurant owners, for the most part, are often bad at thinking of what they do as a product. They think about the food that they make, and they think about how it's good and people should come here because it's good food. And the challenge that I've had, and the thing that I'm really passionate about, is explaining, like, okay, we're going to go out on Friday night. We have any number of choices. Certainly here in New York City, we have thousands and thousands of choices. What kind of experience are you providing, and what kind of experience, what kind of people are looking for that experience, and making sure, I mean, this goes back to all that marketing stuff, right? Understanding an audience, segmenting the audience, coming up with a target audience, coming up with some identity for your product, and saying, this is what the product is. Car companies do this really great. Clothing companies do this really great. We see, huge companies do this, and restaurants are particularly bad at doing this. And I have this conversation all the time. It's funny, whenever I'm introduced to new clients and I say, we have some conversation, and it always leads to invariably where I say, well, who's your restaurant for? And invariably they will say some version of, well, it's for everyone. And I say, no, it's not for everyone. They say, yeah, everyone would have a good time here. I think everyone would like it. So that's different. Who this restaurant is for is different than would people enjoy it. And so, and I tell about this, I always give this example when I was working for a very brief period for this steakhouse. It was a Greek steakhouse here in New York City.
Hmm.
And that was interesting, right? Have you ever heard of a Greek steakhouse? I haven't. So instead of like butter sauces and everything, they were Greek sauces. They were yogurt based, and
Hmm.
they were all different herbs that they were using. It wasn't rosemary and thyme necessarily. It was dill and other things, and it was a different take on a steakhouse. In any event, and he was saying this place is for everyone. This place is for everyone. I said no. It's dark, it's sexy, it's loud, it's expensive, the portions are huge already, right? Like, this is not for elderly people because it's too dark, it's too loud, right? This is a sceney place. You've made a sceney restaurant. This is a C and B scene kind of place. That's just what you've done. You've got to like Greek food. The New York City has a huge Greek population. And he said, yeah, but I don't want just Greek people here. I said, well, let's start with the Greek people,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
people who already know these flavors that you're talking about, because they've also never seen a Greek steakhouse. And he basically like got the idea from in Athens right now. There's this big movement for these Greek style steakhouses, really celebrating kind of like the mountainous, the mountainous terrain and
Yep.
and kind of the cultures there. But here in the United States, especially, we just think of Greek food as seafood, right? Like, you go
Hmm.
into a Greek restaurant here, and it's fish chilled on ice. And so we don't think of it in those terms. I said, so start with the people who already know what you're doing, who already love what you're doing, who know those flavors, and just, again, preach to the choir, tell people something that they already believe, and then expand out from there. But again, it's like if you get an elderly couple coming in to that restaurant and they aren't expecting loud music and a dark dark lighting, they're not walking out saying anything good about your restaurant. They're saying, "Oh, it's really bad. It's really bad because it was dark and noisy." But see, you don't want that getting spread out there. You want people in there who are going to love it, like, to say the same thing, right? Like, oh yeah, it was really dark and the music was really loud. It was sexy. It's that they're saying the same descriptors, but it's in a different context through a different lens. So that is the challenge, getting them to understand that each experience is different.
So I'm going to equate that to the staffing industry as the business that where we work in. So a lot of businesses that we deal with are online only, or if they do have offices, they don't have offices that you can walk into off the street. There's no walk-ins or drop-ins from a candidate or a client. So the problem they have is, how do you take a really good experience and move it online, or how do you create an online experience? And you're right. Well, you mentioned there's lots of other businesses out there, the likes of the big grocery stores, the big retailers. Online experience is what they do. You wouldn't buy from them online if you didn't have that kind of experience. So how do you move something that is slightly kind of transactional, slightly resented, like recruitment and staffing? Because businesses, if they could, they probably wouldn't want to use a staffing firm, and candidates, if they had a choice, they probably wouldn't want to go with a staffing firm. They'd rather do it all kind of directly. So you're already facing an uphill battle with a lot of these these audiences that we've already you've talked about audiences before. So how do you give them a great experience online, so they either apply, or they give you the job order, or they just contact you? And it's really difficult. It's really difficult to it's all around calls to action. It's all around added value. It's all around looking transparent, feeling human, feeling approachable. So I think there are some similarities to kind of how you get people bums on seats in a restaurant. It's a different side. You've got physical locations you've got to get people to, but those touch points start online. And a lot of times, you've talked about Instagram. The term Instagrammable basically is built for food establishments. You've got to have Instagrammable food. The amount of times now you go into a restaurant, I do it all the time. You sit there and you hold your phone over your plate and go click, and you take a photo straight onto Instagram.
But what makes something Instagrammable? Because so I'll say, so your question is, how do you establish this in a digital space? And I think it really begins before that with identifying a clear identity. And this is so much of the work I do, saying, who are you and what makes you different? What sets you apart from all the other steakhouses in New York City? Well, the fact that you're a Greek steakhouse. So all the sides, all the appetizers, all the sauces are going to have, a Greek flair to them. That's a key differentiation point, and it's going to turn some people away and it's going to attract others. So getting really, really clear on exactly who you are and what you're doing. And it's the same thing with, you're a recruiting agency, a staffing agency is playing middleman between a company and a candidate. And it's the same advice you give both the candidate and the employer, right? The employer, what sets you apart from all the other places that a great candidate can go work for? Why should they come here? And you've got to define that. Likewise, right? We've got resumes and we've got resume coaches and resume writers. How do you set yourself apart from the other 20, 30, 50 capable, qualified candidates? What sets you apart? What's the unique perspective? What's the interesting skills that you bring? What's the, again, the unique experience that you bring to the table? And it's no different. It's no different than with the restaurants. So it starts there. You have to be able to identify it, and you have to be willing to say, this is who we are. This is who we're for, right?
Yeah. I mean, in recruitment, there's three parties involved. You've got the recruiter, and you've got the candidate and the client either side. And there's a piece of marketing for each. They all need to know what they want, who they're doing it for. And the best businesses, the best recruitment agencies are always niche. They have to be, or niche, as as I know it can be kind of like bludgeoned into. So it's about being that kind of very, very uber specialist, basically. And you go with a certain recruitment agency if you're going to go down that route, because you know that they have good contacts with best businesses in, I don't know, finance, banking, whatever else. That's why you go with them. But they've marketed themselves as being the best business to do that you want to get to. That's why we would be working with them. And in your example, the Greek restaurant, if you don't like Greek food, you ain't going there. You know what I mean? It's probably, why try to attract people, if they're not into Greek food, if they don't like that Greek food? If they're the kind of person who tries anything, great. You're fine. But again, with a recruitment agency, they're not going to try and pitch themselves to people outside of the niche that they work in. And again, the restaurants are exactly the same as that. But it's understanding that. And then there's subtleties to that as well that I'm sure you'll understand as well, with regards to the tone of the message. The way that you come across your brand, all these kind of things are subtle kind of indicators on why someone should be, handing over their money at the end of the meal because they've had had a great meal, had a great steak, but there is all little kind of subtle little kind of treats that you need to try and get across. And one of the reasons why I think, these restaurants are in need of your help, because that's not what they do. That's not their job, And so that kind of brings me on to, I'm going to say my first question, really, was what's your kind of process for when you work with a business? How do you build out a strategy for them? Because I think it would be interesting for the audience to understand if there's the similarities or the differences between how we might work with a business. So how does it work in your world?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we've already kind of talked about the first step. The first step of working with any client is identifying, really getting clear on the identity of the place. I'm really understanding what the product is, right? Like a meal here is a product, and what kind of experience is that? And then figuring out who wants that experience. Is this a date place? Is this a place for a bunch of guys? Is this a place for a bunch of girls? Is this just a bar? Is this a quick meal? In every place needs that, right? You need to figure out your niche, exactly what is the experience you're crafting, and then who wants that experience. That's the first step. Then you figure out all of the potential ways to communicate that, right? Like, who are the competitors, and then how can you differentiate yourself, and how can you further differentiate yourself? You were talking about Instagrammable things, right? The things that get shot and posted to Instagram are the things that you can't get anywhere else, right? And it doesn't have to be, we can certainly talk about, big, fancy, expensive restaurants, but, the same can be true at, anywhere else. You've got to, this is where it is. It's like, I often talk to clients, chefs and restaurant owners. I say, how can we embellish this? How can we make this more interesting in its presentation? Because number one, it's going to make the actual experience, the actual dining experience, come to life. Because we're going to put that plate down, and it's going to have an interesting presentation, and people are going to, oh my God, this is so cool. This is so cool. And yeah, then they're going to take a picture of it. And then they're going to post that picture, and people are going to say, oh my God, where is that dish? I want to go get it. Like, so, building it into what you do. I always say this, like, marketing of the thing can't make up for the thing. You can't just put out, great emails and put up a great website and curate a good Instagram feed that's disconnected from the actual experience. So let's reverse engineer it. Let's build dishes that people want to take pictures of, because also let's keep in mind that it's going to get them to focus more on their meal. Then suddenly they're not on their phones. They're not talking about this, that, and the other thing. A plate goes down that looks really dramatic, and people stop and go, oh, wow, that's beautiful. And then there's more awareness, right? Just on a sensory, staying present in the moment in a mindfulness way. It brings your focus, your attention to what you're doing, which is eating, and brings you back to that experience. Oh, we're in a restaurant, we're eating. I ordered this. Look at this. So just on that level, it works. So yeah, on promotion and getting people to talk about you and repost and share and all that. Yeah, it's a tactic, to put a dramatic looking dish, but also it just makes the event more interesting. And so that's the next step, is figuring out all the different ways. What are the different touch points? How can we amend service? How can we build out the menu to help highlight the things that we do well, the things that set us apart from other places? With the Greek steakhouse, I said, you got to double down on the Greek. Get rid of the béarnaise sauce. Get rid of the bordelaise sauce. I can get that anywhere else. Come up with a Greek version of a bordelaise, a Greek version of a béarnaise sauce. Do a yogurt-based sauce, a dill sauce, whatever that is. You got to own Greek and double down on it. And so then I work with them to help, develop the menu and the drinks menu and the wine list and the steps of service. And then once we, figure out the product, the experience, right? The in-restaurant experience, then we can look at Instagram. Then we can look at our email strategy. Then we can look at our website. Then we can, but that's the last piece. You got to make sure the experience is locked in.
So you actually go way further than what would be classed as traditional marketing in that sense. You're coming on board as a restaurant consultant, basically at this point. It's all to kind of give with the means of an end, that it has the brand has that great feel.
And you know what? And I didn't start out that way. It started off just doing the promotion side, and the longer I did this, I just wanted to be. I just kept moving closer and closer to the starting line. And I realized, oh no, I got to be at the starting line to really be able to do this work well, because the experience is so indelibly connected to marketing the experience, to promoting the experience. And that's where I take the 18 years of restaurant experience and put that into, say, listen, I've opened, 9 different restaurants for, 6 Michelin stars all together, and James Beard award-winning chefs. And I've done all that. And so to disregard all of that knowledge and skills and experience would be doing my clients a great disservice, and wouldn't make sense.
So we spoke about the fact that it's a very visual kind of medium, really, the kind of restaurant biz, which is a little different to the recruitment sphere. It's not very visual at all. There's nothing really to share as such. And so in that way, it's very much based on other formats. So there's a lot of written, a lot of copy, a lot of research, a lot of documentation. It's getting better with the kind of the visual side. So now because it's much more kind of transaction and business, like, you get a lot of webinars, you get kind of guides and videos and stuff like that. But traditionally, recruitment doesn't work very well on Instagram, because there's nothing Instagrammable about it. And I'm just wondering if within the restaurant biz, whether there is a place for restaurant, like a restaurant blog, or being an authority on your market within the restaurant biz, not just you, but and a restaurant itself understanding the market it's in and sharing that kind of analysis with its competitors, with its peers, with its diners, or is that just overkill and just never needed? But where does format come into it, basically?
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is that you guys have come up with really interesting solutions because you've got a very boring product, right? Like staffing recruitment is like boring.
Yeah.
It's a documentation and copy and this and that, and so you've had to dress it up and make it sexier, make it
Mm-hmm.
more interesting, make it more compelling. And you've used the tools at your disposal, like videos and webinars and all of this to, to reach out, to go beyond the screen, to make it more compelling. Interestingly enough, I think that's the next frontier for restaurants. I think they are trapped in this place of like, let's make pretty food and take a picture of pretty food and put it up there. And I think the fact that we get to rely on those visuals, we've been really lazy as an industry about exploring other more interesting, more engaging tactics out there, like video, like any of a number of things that other companies are doing. So I don't know how to get that unstuck, but it needs to get unstuck.
So that neatly segues me into the next question, which was around what are the kind of latest trends in restaurant marketing? Where do you see it going?
So all bets are off moving forward. I mean, this is the industry is being decimated right now, certainly in the United States, as and again, now it's funny, when we spoke just a couple of weeks ago, it was bad and just starting to get better, and our numbers were coming down. And now as schools are starting back up again, and universities all over the country are back in session, our numbers are spiking again. Like we're nowhere close to the finish line here. The short answer is that restaurants are notoriously bad at marketing.
Mm-hmm.
It's why I've seen a need for what I do. It's all the same gimmicks and tactics over and over and over again. I think the only way forward for restaurants is to better integrate the marketing into the actual experience. That now, as things are more and more digital, we've got face-to-face time with customers for 2 hours when they come to enjoy our product. And that's a rare thing, right? Even this, if we put out an hour-long podcast, you put it out there, you don't know how people are enjoying it. Are they listening on a commute, or when they're at the gym, or when they're making dinner? You don't know how they're interacting with this product. And the same is true when people buy clothes, or when people, rent a movie, or whatever it is. But restaurants we have this unique opportunity to guide and serve throughout that entire experience. And I try to get a lot of my clients to understand what a boon that is, that other industries would love the instant feedback that we get in the restaurant industry. So, and there are things that I think can happen, but I think it has to be, the future is tying it into the experience.
So on the back of that, within recruitment, there is a big push for things like marketing automation. Okay, so we are a big advocate of HubSpot. Other marketing CRMs and marketing automation tools are out there if anybody wants to go check them out. But we're a big kind of advocate of that, and building in things like email sequencing and automatic signups and tracking and things like that. That's quite kind of techie marketing stuff. Is that playing a part in the restaurant biz? Is that something that you're kind of an advocate of to get these businesses using more?
So, and this is what I mean, right? These are digital tactics that have been around for, widely used for 10 years at least. Let's be conservative and say 10 years. This is a big part of what I do. with my clients, and they look at me like I got three heads because they just don't know why they have to put in the effort. And the first client I ever worked with, and I said, you need a welcome sequence. You need, build nurture sequences. And already there aren't good integrations with the reservation software. So this is the next thing that I'm exploring. Like, when people join the email list, okay, I can put together a nurture sequence. But what about when somebody books a reservation? They just get the automatic thing from OpenTable or Resi, right, which are the companies here, and it says, thank you, your reservation's all set. Like, what a missed opportunity. And yet, so I also work in the fitness industry, and there are all kinds of companies that integrate really, really nicely with the different reservation and POS software over there. So yes, this is the next the next frontier, because restaurants are just bad at doing it. So yeah, building an email list, having a blog, communicating steadily with fans, with patrons. It's what most restaurants don't do, and they should do more of it. And then the further automation, when little triggers, that's something that I'm specifically looking into, and I'm trying to find a partner that can integrate. And nobody's got the API integration with these reservation software. So if there's anybody listening, get in touch. There's an opportunity that there should be automations when they book the reservation, or a day out from the reservation, or later in the evening when they've finished their reservation, or a week later to sell other things. And that's kind of what I meant about selling, integrating the marketing with the actual experience, that there should be an email that hits their inbox, 5 minutes after they leave, because everyone leaves a nice restaurant and gets in a cab, or they start driving home and their spouse is sitting in the passenger seat. Why shouldn't they get an email? Say, oh, the restaurant just emailed me. They wanted to say thank you so much for joining, and we've got a winemaker series next month. We can give you 20% off, your tickets if you book them right now. If you book them tonight.
It does occur to me that there is a real kind of opportunity to take a step change. So I don't know if it's the same over in the States, but at the minute, I mean, we can go eat in restaurants, but a lot of places now have a QR code on the table. You scan the QR code and it takes you to the restaurant menu, basically, whether it's on their website or whether it's a PDF to download. But one, you've got someone's attention because they've got their phone in their hand at that point. They're on your collateral, whether that's your website, whether it's surely that is a prime opportunity to say, would you like to sign up for our newsletter? Easy enough. Boom. Yes, I do. Or even at this point, oh, I see you've kind of checked in, or I see did you know you can get, if next time you return, you can get 20% off. Click here to get your 20% off voucher. It just seems obvious, right?
Everybody has their phones in their hand. Everybody does most of their purchasing from their phone. Why would we not put the two together? It was the same thing with, with Wi-Fi in the restaurants. So I say this all the time to restaurant owners too. I say, I always come to them. I say, here are the 11 ways that I know how to reliably and politely get people's email address. And one of them is like a Wi-Fi code, right? So I said, do you offer Wi-Fi in your restaurant? Well, yes, we do. I said, great. Then let's enable a lock on it, so they have to put in their email address. You've got to sign up for our communications in order to get the Wi-Fi. It's a transaction. It's free, and we're just asking for the opportunity to keep in touch with you because you obviously liked us enough to join us this morning for breakfast or for lunch, and so we would just like the opportunity to keep in touch and let you know what's going on. Why wouldn't you do that?
It also, in this kind of, in the post-COVID era where generally touching stuff is gonna kind of seem as kind of like a taboo. The fact that you're going to be doing most of it from your phone. You're going to be ordering. You could even order your food basically from your phone. Now, you're not going to do that in your top end restaurants. I get that. I know. I understand that. But the majority.
Why not?
Hey, you're the one. It's up to you to convince them, not me.
Why not? Listen, all bets are off, and this is these are the conversations I'm having with clients now. It's like rethink everything. Restaurants have been around for 250 years, at least in the way that we know them. You come in, you look at a menu, you pick something, they make it for you, they bring it to you, and then you pay at the end and then leave. That has only been around a couple hundred years, and it's gone basically unchanged, right? The biggest kind of shift in that has been with Talk reservation system, where the high-end restaurants basically sell dinner reservations as tickets. So you buy tickets to dinner, just like you'd buy tickets to the theater or to a concert. And people say, oh, no one's going to do it. No one's going to do it. Why not? The restaurant's covering their bases, covering their food cost, because no shows cripple them when they've spent hours and hours and hours, preparing painstakingly, like these items that have, all this prep. Why not? Is it going to work for every restaurant? No, but it'll work for a bunch, and it's largely borne out that way. It's been successful. So why can't we rethink all of the things that we just took for granted, like ordering? Why do we need a waiter? I really mean it. I hate waiters. I was a waiter for a long time, but I hate waiters, because there's that, like, am I going to get the kind of waiter I want tonight, or am I not? Am I going to get kind of the pushy, talkative one? Are they going to keep interrupting me? Are they going to try to oversell me? Are they going to be inattentive? So many things can go wrong with the experience with a waiter, far more than can go right. And if there's a way to cut that out, why not?
I think there's a lot of waiters in New York at this minute, kind of just about to throw their whatever device they're listening to this podcast on out of the window.
It's, but the industry has to, reinvent itself in the way that other industries continue to reinvent themselves, and the restaurants haven't. And I will say this, and this is the conversation I have with restaurant owners, is that, we talked about this in the last podcast, their profit margins at a given restaurant, right? The failure rate is 80% for a new restaurant. 80% of restaurants fail within 2 years. That's insane. Why would anyone open a restaurant? Of those 20% of restaurants that actually succeed, about 80% of them, only make between 3 to 5% profit. That's a lot of work and crazy odds to make 3 to 5% profit margin, right? Not when most businesses are built with a 15 to 20 to 30% profit margin, right? Or digital, right? Like the digital products are built on a 60 to 70% profit margin. There's much less overhead. So if those are the numbers, why would we not dare to rethink them? If we can use kiosks, and so maybe the really high-end restaurants, you're still going to want a waiter, because you're going to want that attentive service. You're going to want that hand-holding. But I can imagine a whole bunch of restaurants, if you were just handed an iPad and said, here, press it in, pick what beer you want, press send, and someone will bring it to you in 5 minutes. Yeah. Why do I need to tell someone to go do that? They're going to go to the computer, to the iPad, and press it, and then they're going to bring it to me. So I'm just cutting out the middleman, which, it's like, then I don't have to wait to flag down the waiter. I can literally just reach over, grab it, and click it. Why would I not take advantage of it? It's a better experience for the guest, and the restaurant is going to save all this on labor. If you can go from 10 waiters to 4, why would you not do it?
And the excuse that goes back around that is that you're gonna maybe lose a little bit of that personal touch, isn't it? I guess that's people come to a restaurant because they want to possibly interact with the waiter, the waitress, or have some of that kind of interaction. And the other excuse would be, well, the market's going to be flooded out of work waiters.
So if you no longer have to take care of every table, are you able to take a step back and identify the tables that actually want the waiter, that actually want that kind of experience? Does that free you up, because you don't have to go greet every table, take a water order, take a drink order, take the food order, put all those orders into the computer? If you've got 30 tables in a restaurant, can you take a step back when you're not dealing with the minutia, all the little details? Can you step back and can you better serve? Can you provide higher touch points than just taking an order, putting it into a computer, bringing the food to them? Can you find ways to go above and beyond now that you don't have to spend your time doing all the other things? This is what I'm trying to rethink. I'm trying to make this industry both more profitable, a better experience for the guest, and changing it in the process for the better.
Chip, we are coming to the end of our time together, but you know what? I think maybe you've got some great ideas for the recruitment industry. In all honesty, I think we could have you. I think we could do with you over here to kind of to shake up the staffing and recruitment business. as I said at the start, if anybody wants to kind of get in contact with you, all your details will be on the show notes. If anybody wants
Yeah.
to listen to the first podcast in this little series, then we'll include that in the notes as well. I actually had to listen to it the other day. I'm not a huge fan of listening to my own voice, even though I kind of do it almost for a living now. But do you know what? It was a good chat, and it's worth a listen. For once in a while, I come off quite well, I think. But
you came out great. It was a great conversation.
So everybody, I kind of go over to the Restaurant Strategy podcast, and also just check out some of the other episodes because they're really useful. Even if you're not into kind of restaurant marketing, there's still some great kind of great content in there. So Chip, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. I hope at some point in the future we can do this again, and maybe whoever knows, in a very far distant future, we might even actually get to meet physically when we can all get on planes again. But thank you very much.
I look forward to that. It's been a pleasure being on the show. I'm glad to have these couple of conversations.
Cheers.
Thank you.